I disagree.
I disagree. You don't have the right to my opinion.
I'm just trying to save the world, man.
I don't know, maybe.
It's legit.
Can I finish?
Can't fit. Hold on. Fine.
And now, disagree to disagree. Dun, 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 dun. That's not our theme song.
Could be.
Maybe.
Was that the A-Team, wasn't it?
Was that what I was doing?
Sounded like the A-Team.
Certainly an 80s action theme. Very likely.
Written by Stephen J. Cannell.
Absolutely. All right. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Disagree to Disagree. As always, I'm Jason Page, and you can disregard the other guy. I've got a mute button.
My name's Brett, by the way.
It's Brett, my good buddy Brett Sowie. We can't forget Brett. You complete me.
Okay.
I'm not sure that'll work. We might have put people off.
Are we going to have to hug it out now, or can we just somehow just move on from that and pretend that never happened?
We'll pretend that never happened.
Okay, I can do that.
Moving on. This week's episode is brought to you by the Wisconsin Association of Friday Fish Fryers, who remind you that tacos may be for Tuesdays, but Fridays are for fried fish. Now available for contactless carryout. We'll even throw in an air freshener, so your car don't stink.
It's true. You gotta have an air freshener. You don't have, yeah.
Do you like your Friday fish fries, Brett?
I do. I am a huge fan. I don't think you can be a Wisconsinite and not be a fan of the Friday fish fry.
I learned that. I transplant about 2 years ago now, and I dated a woman for a brief period of time upon my arrival, and I'm like, all right, you got to show me the Wisconsin things. And on our second date, she took me to a Friday fish fry.
Wow.
And I mean, who's above a breaded whitefish?
You've never been to a fish fry before that?
Not like I've had fried fish. It's just not like
Friday night, you're seeking it out?
like a traditional thing that everybody goes out and
Gotcha.
does. And it's very much part of the culture here. So, yeah.
Well, welcome to the club.
I know. It's very nice. It's very nice. Thank you. You want to tell people where they can find us?
You guys can all find us at our website, disagree2disagree.buzzsprout.com. You can also find us at the typical social media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at the D2D podcast. 2 is numerical. And we look forward to hearing from everybody. Once again, at the D2D podcast, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
And most importantly, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
That's right.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
And please make sure you guys comment, rate, and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys.
Absolutely. The support has been fantastic, and we appreciate every share we get, every rating we get, every unsolicited review we get.
And make sure you guys take part of the polls that we're going to be posting up on our Facebook site and even possibly maybe on Twitter as well. And we'd like to hear back from all you guys. So make sure you interact with us. We want to hear from you, especially show ideas. We want to get some feedback on that.
Yeah, and we've got a show for you today.
Mm-hmm.
I think initially we're going to start off talking about the second and final presidential debate.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to have a little fun coaching for the opposite team, saying what we think the opposing opponent should do to win out the election. And then I think we're going to segue into the Hunter Biden scandal and sort of a larger media bias
Conversation
in a whole. So should be a good one. And let's get started with the debate.
The debate. I feel like this was the debate that we wanted the first time around.
Yeah.
I really honestly wish that we had that the first time, because coming into this debate, I think could have set up Trump so much better. So having gone through the whole debate experience, Trump being as aggressive as he was, not having the town hall, then showing up in the last and final debate, I wish the first one was like this. I think he would be a little bit more in a better standing position with undecided voters, that mysterious segment that's still lurking out there.
I agree completely. I think he did himself a great disservice that first debate. And, it's funny because this is how he closed out 2016, too. I mean, once every 4 years, Trump comes to Jesus, listens to somebody else, and tries to act like a responsible human adult person. And he did. I mean, it was a much better performance. He even went so far as to graciously comment on Kristen Welker's moderating. So kudos to him for that. I like the idea of the mute button going forward, you know. Uh, I do. I do think it was a much more straightforward thing. I think in general, it's like everything else, not really going to move the needle much. I thought both of them did pretty well. They made a couple of unforced errors and missed a few easy shots. I will say, from my side of the aisle, it was psychologically gratifying to see the split screen and watch Trump just have to sit there and listen as someone disagrees with him. That was so psychologically satisfying. That was my favorite part of the debate, was the split screen watching Trump listen to Biden.
Again, that goes back to how we just wished that this was the debate that we wanted to have the first time.
What were your takeaways?
In large part, I agree pretty much with your assessment without going in my long diatribes. The thing that I really liked about the split screen, because I was a fan of it, is the fact that we got to actually see someone listen and react silently to what the other one was saying. There were some moments from Biden where, you know, he kind of turned over and had like this confused look in his eye, and you know, I kind of paid attention to that. And then looking at Trump doing some of his usual facial mannerisms. And so it was just good to see that. And one thing that I noticed with Biden was there was a couple of flubs. I think that was universally pretty agreed upon. Trump, it did, I would agree, look like that maybe he was really being conscientious of keeping his demeanor and letting people say there's certain things.
I feel like he kept it up for about an hour, and then Biden and the whole thing was getting under his skin, and he became a little bit more like that aggressive Trump.
There was that moment around that point in the debate, and I know where you're talking about where that happened, but it also showed that he kind of collected himself at the same time. I thought it was a great debate. I thought Biden did relatively well. I still think that the Sleepy Joe moniker kind of applies a little bit, because I remember watching him walk off the debate stage, and it felt like a guy who just had ran 5 miles, as opposed to Trump having a little bit more bounce in his step. Overall, this is something that you and I universally agree upon pretty much every time we've talked about these things, is the needle doesn't feel like it's going to move that much.
No, it's one in the trenches now, and one of the things that I think my biggest takeaway, a lot of people's biggest takeaway, and really hurtful to Trump with these suburban women and this erosion in the suburbs of his, he did not have a good answer for the 500 plus separated children. I mean, America had government sanctioned kidnapping essentially, and now there are these 500 kids that we can't locate their parents, and that's tragic. And the only answer should be, we're working night and day to figure out these kids' placement. And instead, his response is, well, they're in such nice facilities. As if that's just beyond the pale. I think the rest of the world looks at us and shakes their head. And that's the thing. That's the thing, now that I've had a couple days to digest it, the thing that sticks out to me most. That and Biden's unforced oil error towards the end.
Yep. I was going to bring that up while you were talking about the 545 children not being found and connected with their families. I don't want to say something here, to be bluntly honest, that's going to sound insensitive. Anything that has to do with children being separated from their parents is a very big problem and issue to begin with.
It's barbaric.
Agreed. But at the same time, knowing the realities of what these Border Patrol agents and ICE agents and immigration agents have to go through, a large part of these children have come up without their parents, transported by coyotes, not literal coyotes. That's the moniker for these people that help bring people across the border now.
I had a political cartoon in my head where the kid was riding a coyote.
And congrats to the person that made that meme. So there are instances where these children come up alone when they're not even with their parents.
But it was also a Stephen Miller thought up directive to purposefully be cruel and separate parents and children as a disincentive. I mean, that is cruel.
And you know what the reasoning is for that?
Because he's a monster.
Oh, no. The reason that they do that is because to make sure that they are with their actual parents and not with sexual predators. So there are instances of where these things happen, and it's in the children's best interest to make sure that they're not with someone that they're not supposed to be with to begin with.
Sure, but
so it's not coming from a place that you're saying
Yeah,
It's
it is.
monstrous.
It's
They
a
literally are trying.
psychological deterrent. I mean, they've stated as much.
I respect what you're saying. I do.
I don't know. That was the thing where
I'm just letting you know what their motivations are and their policies
I-
is that in order to keep the children safe, you don't give them to people that you have proven they're not really actually their parents, or they're not even with their parents to begin with. I hope it gets solved. These children need to be with their parents, period. Bottom line, make sure that they're with the people that they're actually supposed to be with.
yeah, it's sad. And it's just Trump time after time has the opportunity, the opening to show empathy, and he doesn't. And I think that is his Achilles heel with so much of the electorate. They're just sick of him not showing any empathy, because I think that, I don't know, in Trump land, if it's not bluster, it's weakness. I don't know.
It,
I feel like empathy is a strong emotion, not a weak emotion.
I would like to, I think in order to maybe prove that empathy is, and again, not to minimize what's happening and what is happening to these children right now, 545. But what are the numbers of the children that are reunited with their parents? I'd like to know what those are, not to, again, minimize the children that haven't. Is it possible that the numbers are, they find their parents and they get them connected more than they don't? I'm interested to know those numbers, but again, not to minimize the children they aren't with. Again, they need to be with the people they're supposed to be with. And we need to make sure of that.
Yeah, and I won't make you defend that any longer because it's indefensible. And I thought Biden was doing so well. He was needling Trump. He was, I know you said he had some gaffes. I didn't see any large ones. The real unforced error I felt was, Trump always says the quiet part out loud. And in this instance, Biden did, about sort of the liberal view on the oil industry and the transition that I believe needs to be made. He didn't articulate it in a way that is politically advantageous for him, though.
As soon as the debate was done, the campaign was already, as Biden's walking up to the plane, they were already trying to make sure that they're on repair call. And as soon as you're on repair call, whenever you're in a political campaign, that means something happened with your candidate, that he might have let himself a little too open, and it could negatively impact him with voters. Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio, Pennsylvania were the ones largely point out, even by the pundits that analyzed and post-game the debate.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I think both Trump and Biden made one big mistake that is like the type of mistake they can't afford to make. It eats at the edges that they need to grow. Trump can't have this erosion in the suburbs, and Biden can't have this erosion in Texas or oil country. And they both gave the other side something, to dislike about them.
Again, I wish this was the debate that we had the first time, because how much more interesting would this debate have been if it was like this the first time around?
Well, that first debate, I just felt like I needed a shower after it. It was just like it felt like, I don't know. It was hard to watch.
You felt that dirty, huh?
It was hard. You don't remember how hard that was to watch?
It was difficult, but I didn't need to take a shower.
All right.
But I understand, dude. Maybe
It's just a metaphor. I didn't really need to take a shower.
maybe you were sweaty. Maybe you were working yourself up into a fervor,
Maybe.
which makes sense.
A frothy fervor. As I am often known to work myself into. So what else about the debate? Is there anything else about the debate that stuck out to you?
Overall, Trump, I think, performed the best. And I think Biden just barely got over the bar that is set for him, however you want to think.
Man,
in my mind, I thought Biden just came over. I think they both had successes, but in the end, I believe Biden's oil gaffe is more hurtful in the overall compared to any gaffe that Trump may or may have not done. And Trump held his own. He was very good. And I will say this, just to finish real quickly, the moderator, I thought she was wonderful.
Yeah, Kristen Welker was great, but she also had the mute button on her side.
I thought it was the debate commission that there's other people in the booth that had control of the mute button, or was the moderator the one?
The debate commission was in control of the button. I'm just saying she had it on her side. Metaphorically, the candidates knew that they couldn't talk because their microphone wouldn't be working.
Yeah.
And that's something that poor Chris Wallace didn't have on his side.
I remember seeing after the debate was done, I switched back and forth between CNN and Fox News, and I actually caught Chris Wallace, and I'm glad I did. He goes, I wish that this was the debate that I had. You could just see it in his face, and he had a little glint of light in his eye where he found the humor in it.
Yeah, I thought, getting back to your takeaway, it's funny because we're both coming from our own spot, but I felt like Trump was leaps and bounds better than his performance in the first debate. But I also felt Joe was better, and he was very pointed, and he made some strong arguments directly at Trump. I also don't think Trump was done any favors by having to spend the first 15 minutes on coronavirus, because that immediately put him back on his heels. If that would have come up later in the debate, I think, I don't know. It was not an advantageous first thing for him to have to talk about. And I think, yeah, it's going to be one of those things that the status quo is the status quo. You saw what you wanted to see, and now we're entering into this fervored end game, this race to the finish line.
I would agree with that. I think that's a pretty good thought and assessment. The intellectual question that I put my mind to be honest, and even intellectually honest, is that COVID discussion for anybody in whoever it would be in the administration during this time period has a pretty, I think it's universally accepted, difficult mountain to climb. And it just happens to be Trump.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty universally accepted that he hasn't climbed that mountain very well.
I wouldn't say universally accepted, but I would say that there is a large number and segment that would agree with you on that. And largely, those are people that are on your side of the aisle politically to begin with. I think there are people that are on the other side, and there's a percentage that see it differently.
But he's underwater on that issue, like 65-35.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's definitely fair. But I also, at the same time, it would be difficult no matter who's in office. But at the same time, he's the one that's in there, and he has to sort of talk about what the plan has been, what the plan is now, and what the plan is going to be.
Well,
that's fair.
That's
fair.
We've talked about this before, but if that's what he talked about, it would be politically advantageous for him. But he doesn't. He says things like, I'm immune now, and it's going away, and we're going to have vaccines very shortly, and we need to open our schools. And these just aren't things that jive with what people on the ground's real lives are. So I just think that he's out of step on that issue. And while he could get in step on that issue, he just refuses to. Like, he's had opportunity after opportunity to sort of turn the page on that, and he's going to present that optimistic, rosy cheerleader future, and that's just where he's going to be, I think, and nobody's going to change that.
There are reasons why he's doing that. The rate of surviving this is relatively high, and he's also conducting himself in a manner similar to other presidents during times that are difficult, much like this COVID incident and era that we're in right now. And there's other incidences in our history where he's also trying to paint maybe what you're saying, a rosier picture to keep the confidence of everybody up. I would concede to that, and I would concede that there are things in terms of the numbers and how things were done that could have an argument, as you're stating, showing we didn't do everything right. And again, this is a virus, and it's real difficult when you're in that situation to know if what you're doing is right, because the virus is going to do what it wants to do regardless of who's in office. It's universally accepted that's his weak point, and it was the weak point of the debate for him.
Yeah. So we'll move on from there. So now, are we done with the debate? Should we talk about this final home stretch, and should we do kind of a debate club kind of exercise here where I play Team Trump and you play Team Biden, and we kind of give the political advice we would give to the candidate to close out the election and win?
That's a great idea, especially coming off the last debate, giving advice to the person that we're not voting for and how we think that they should do certain things to help them be in the best position to win.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
All right. Hold on. I gotta get to my notes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that one. It's not that one. Team Trump. Team Trump. Jason's playing for Team Trump, y'all. So I would advise Team Trump to do more of what we saw in the debate. He did this in 2016 as well. Like, he reeled in the craziness. He sought to move more towards the center to assure some of those iffy voters. So I would say do more of that. I would say stop talking about toilets and dishwashers and start talking about taxes and the economy and the stock market. The things that you poll best on, the issues you poll best on, should be the things that you hammer. Just hammer those things. He has got a very slim path to victory. I would take all of the resources and all of the time, and I would camp out in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, probably the primary top three. Spend all of your time and money there and work around the edges, because if you don't win 2 or 3 of those, you're not going to win the presidency. And my final thing, and I know that he wouldn't listen to this, but just stop telling people that COVID's not a problem. Stop talking about being immune. People are going through this on a daily basis, and they see that what you're saying is out of step with the lives that they're living. If not for the health and safety of others, you should do this for the health and safety of your own political life, because this is the biggest albatross around your neck, and you need to find a way to flip the script. But that would be political consultant Jason Page's advice for Donald Jehoshaphat. That would be
Jehoshaphat.
That would be political consultant Jason Page's advice to Donald J. Trump.
You're hired.
Right? I'm so good at this.
My analysis is going to be definitely different than yours, and it's probably going to come out as the most weakest out of our 2 examples. Not because I'm trying to be disingenuous, but probably because I haven't put as much thought into it as you have, Jason, to be bluntly honest. And I think that's okay. Joe Biden, for me, he should keep doing what he's doing. But I would think in order to best bolster him to be in the driver's seat is to get out there more. Be interacting with people. It's what he does very well. He interacts with people. Especially in the debate, you saw that. He looked at the camera. He looks at you. You want more of that. The reassuring statements, that's what I want. Get more of that out there. The other thing is to make sure you keep hammering at your policy plans. Your policy plans, by and large, according to pundits, is your strongest standpoint. I would keep doing that. I would also say, because of the COVID situation, keep doing what you're doing in regards to that. It's obviously working. Look at the polls. At the same time, participate maybe in more Zoom operations where you can interact with regular voters and have that be publicly made available, where they're talking with you and you're talking with them. I think that could really solidify things, especially in the markets where you feel like you're weakest at, in the typical swing states that we see right now. But I would definitely, the number one thing is get out there. Get out there and interact with as many voters in as many ways as you possibly can, because you have a very good rapport with the people when you're around them. Push your policy plans. You're strong. You make sure you have things organized one by one, and you're able to explain that to the people. So in other words, maybe Joe Biden can just keep doing what he's doing because it's working, but a little bit more interaction with voters, I think, could put him over the hump.
It's easier to give advice on how to change a campaign that's behind than it is to try to shake up a campaign that's ahead.
And it's interesting with those poll numbers is because they're now closing in since the debate has happened, and the numbers are under what the deficit was between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump at the same time. I'm not saying that Biden is losing anything, and I'm not saying that Trump is gaining anything. It's just a similar indication that we had previously, and the polls, as we know, are sometimes right, they're sometimes wrong. It's just an interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah, and I think that the polls in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida are all close enough to being within the margin of error.
That's correct.
That, there's going to be mail-in ballots that get refused for any number of legitimate reasons. There may not be people that come out on voting day because of this, that, or the other issue. Brett's raising his hand. He's got something to say.
So, interesting stat here, Jason, and I'm not going to source it. You guys can look this up. It's made available publicly. About 36% of the ballots in 2016 that were filed as absentee or mail-in were 36% more than at this time in 2016. I think that's an incredible stat in and of itself.
But does that surprise anyone? I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Sure, I think that's probably a really good example, but at the same time, I think that's something to be said about the promotional campaign that's been the real big push by the Democratic Party. They've largely been pushing this, especially people on the left. And at the same time, the COVID situation has influenced people as well. But it's an interesting number because these were filed, and this is the numbers before the last debate. So the people that have voted that maybe they're like, oh gosh, like they saw something in Biden or they saw something in Trump and they wish that they could have changed their vote. Too late.
Nobody feels that way. People that have already voted have made up their minds.
Just saying.
Most people had made up their minds 4 years ago. I mean, Yeah, I think that maybe are we getting a little off track, Brett? I can't remember.
We're finishing up with the Team Trump thing.
We're finishing up with the Team Trump and the Team Biden. Yeah. No, I think we're both pretty good political consultants. So let's leave it at that.
I would hire you, Jason, though.
Yeah.
I just want you to know that.
Because I'm just loud and opinionated, and that's what you need to be in this business.
You need a mad dog in your
Loud
campaign.
and opinionated. All right. Should we move on from our highly lucrative prospective K Street job as political consultants and get down to the second portion of the show?
I guess if we must.
If we must, it's sure you want to talk about it.
Could have made all that consultation money.
We're gonna, well, that's sweet, sweet K Street consultation money. Also, a very good short-lived Steven Soderbergh series back in the day. Yeah.
Okay.
The Doug Stamper character from what's the House of Cards? That was the first time I saw that actor on that K Street show. Yeah,
Never seen it.
it's a good show.
Okay.
But we were going to talk, and this was touched on in the debate, and you brought it up as wanting to break it out. And when we started talking about it, it was interesting because we both just immediately jumped into our camps. Our confirmation bias set in, and we kind of had a pretty heated discussion about it. And then after thinking about it, I was like, yeah, no, this is something that initially I wasn't keen on talking about it, but I think it is good to talk about it because we are so quick to retreat to our own sides, both of us. And it is a good opportunity for us to talk about this. And then as a larger issue, sort of media bias in general and how we get entrenched in our sides. So, I mean, I guess that's what I'm hoping to get out of this portion of the conversation.
It was funny because when we started talking about this, I didn't see it the way that you did, where we kind of framed ourselves in our camps, kind of departed our camps. To me, it was just a reaction just from the possibility of what could be contained on the laptop and combined with this feeling and observation, in my opinion, of bias in the media. There were outlets such as NPR that said, we're not even going to talk about this. And I'm thinking to myself, A, this could be real and could be a very big problem in the election and going forward. Or B, if it is a boondoggle, I want to know who did it, why they did it, and I want to figure out how we can never let something like that happen again.
Yeah, but you were pretty heated and on your side, rightfully so, because you feel it's media bias, but you're quick to believe what you want to believe. So am I. So is everybody. That is what I'm saying. So maybe to get into this, do you want to give your account of the story and I will then tell you where mine differs? Do you want me to give my account of the story? After you talked about it to me for a little while, I went and I read a couple of articles, so I feel like I've got at least some background, but maybe you're the better.
The basic rundown from when you and I brought it up is you instantly dismissed it, and I said, this needs to be looked at. And so that's where the frustration came in for me, to be honest with you.
I'm just saying, let's get past the frustration.
I just want to make sure that's said, because you kind of painted it a little bit differently. Just to be clarified. That's all.
That's fine. And this might get a little heated. It was heated before. But I think that why don't we get past that and just talk about what the story is from your perspective and why you think it's important.
Yeah, I'll be brief because I know that you've looked into this too. So I'm looking forward to hearing how you can kind of fill in some of these gaps that I may miss.
Well, like you said, a lot of people are just jumping to a conclusion on this and nobody's looking at the actual thing itself.
The briefest way that I can put this down, and again, there's gaps to this because this is a story that's kind of pretty recent in terms of the minds of what's been available to the public. How it's come about is Rudy Giuliani recently released purportedly a hard drive and material from a laptop that belonged to Hunter Biden to the New York Post and also to the FBI via a shop owner in Delaware, where this laptop of Hunter Biden's was purportedly dropped off. It has Hunter Biden's signature on the receipt. That's been made available to the public as well. The shop owner has come under scrutiny for his various political beliefs and what's gone in his personal life. But all that he would say in interviews to CBS, amongst some of them, was that it scared him enough where he needed somebody to take a look at it. So that's how it ended up getting, because the FBI, he felt like, weren't jumping on this. This was released to the FBI last year, according to this man. And then he felt like the FBI wasn't doing anything, passed it on to Rudy Giuliani and lawyers, And then it ended up getting to the New York Post, and then it hit the mainstream. That's how it came about. That's how it started. And now we're in a situation where people are questioning context of emails. And all that I would say is disturbing photographs, possibly, but because of certain laws, you can't, it's very difficult to show those without going through law enforcement.
Say what you're talking about, though.
Photos potentially of underage girls and compromising positions that Hunter Biden may have been in, along with incriminating emails that allude to the potential of Hunter Biden trying to get paid favors that somehow would be back-ended to Joe Biden for access, quote unquote. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And the one thing that has come out recently is the FBI is supporting what has been recently said by Radcliffe, who I believe is with the DNI. These are government officials, by the way, corroborating the FBI is with the DNI that this is not Russian. And no, that's where we stand right now.
I will now tell my side of
that's
well, okay, so that's it's your interpretation, your reading of events.
That's just the briefest that I can surmise of what I know off the top of my head.
And I feel like it's my turn now to kind of give my reading of
please. I want you to fill in the gaps for me.
So this John Paul Mac Isaac, the owner of the computer repair shop where Biden purportedly dropped off this laptop. One, he says that he's got an issue with his eyesight and he can't be 100% sure that it was Biden. I'm wondering how he repairs computers with an issue with his eyesight, but that's neither here nor there. You're right. He gave it because he found things that he found disturbing on it, but disturbing, that's what he said. He gave it to the FBI. The FBI took it. He subsequently gave it to Rudy Giuliani, who subsequently supplied it to the New York Post. And the hullabaloo is all coming from the story that the New York Post printed. The New York Post printed a story that the main writer of the story didn't allow his byline to be used because he thought it was so suspect, according to people in that newsroom. The fact that Rudy Giuliani won't share this hard drive with any other news source to independently verify its contents is in itself questionable. And then the Post story itself, the most salacious thing I think that at least people seem to be keying on is this pedophilia that Republicans are always charging against Democrats. And the Post story doesn't mention it. Rudy Giuliani doesn't mention it. When asked by reporters if he saw any child pornography, Isaac said he did not. So this PolitiFact found that the claim that Hunter Biden has 25,000 pictures and video of him online molesting and raping girls under 10 in China on his laptop to be false. They found that was an unsubstantiated claim that came from an anonymous online forum that has in the past birthed conspiracy theories. And then the sites that you traffic in that then repeat this as fact are citing anonymous sources. So the child pornography thing is just not true. It's a flaming lie. If it was true, that would be the headline the Post gave us. Instead, they gave us some emails that, it's like, can I get a favor? Well, I don't know if I should give you that favor. It's nothing damning to me. It's just like, it seems like something that you guys want to be damning. And it seems like something that my side wants, you're right, to sweep under the rug. But I don't know, man. The more I look into this, I do think it's a nothing burger. It may be Hunter Biden's laptop, and he may be a guy that went through addiction issues and maybe had a post he wouldn't have got if it wasn't for his dad's position. But, ask Don and Eric Trump where they'd be without their dad. So pot calling the kettle black on that one. And I just don't see, I think trying to make people into pedophiles and rapists by innuendo and echo chamber fear-mongering it's just gross, and it needs to stop. And if there was undue influence peddling, and if we want to talk about that, that's fine. But it's the media bias that I hate is it's not even really media. It's just it just gets out there and echoed enough times and then brought back to, Fox News wouldn't even originally run the story that the New York Post ran because they found it not to be credibly sourced. And honestly, people on my side, this looks like a political axe to grind. Rudy Giuliani is the guy where this comes to light. And I know you were saying before, and jump in here and tell me how this is, not the way that Democrats are treated, because you probably have a point, but my point to that is the source is so suspect that it just stinks to high heaven from the get-go. And the fact that he won't release it to anybody but a politically favorable paper to him, and even that article after reading it seems not to amount to much. My reading on this is we shouldn't just disregard it. You're right, but I don't think this is anything.
And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. And there's just a few points where I disagree. There's a reason why those materials cannot be shared in the manner that you think that they need to be released in order to prove that they're real.
But that's you're
just letting you know this is a legal thing. I'm not telling you
those things don't exist, is what I'm telling you.
Okay.
It's a fabrication.
The FBI has corroborated that they're real.
The FBI has corroborated that they have the laptop. They've said nothing about child pornography.
The hard drives have also been distributed to the Delaware State Police also for analysis. So they also have it in their hands as well. Whether or not that this is real, it's disturbing on two different levels for me. One, that it could be. Two, if it isn't, why and how did this happen? Because this has so much political ramifications, whether it's true or whether it's false. And it's analogous of everything that's been going on in terms of what we're hearing out of the media is real or not. I'm not talking to you about this story because I inherently believe in my heart that it's real or not. It disturbs me that this story even exists in the first place, and how there are certain elements that choose to discuss it or not discuss it. And you're spinning it as a particular way of there's just nothing there. There's just nothing there, and there's no sources.
I can't believe you're sticking to the pedophilia thing, though. This is an anonymous rumor online.
I'm not just talking about that. There's also emails in there that are also at the same time.
The emails are political in nature. They have nothing to do with sex.
Not just photographs. There's also emails, which you also focused on in your particular argument against this, is that there's a nothing burger. Unfortunately, there are certain emails that suggest. I don't know if it's real or not. I have no idea, but the emails have been proven to be real.
Suggest what?
There's that there has been payments funneled through Hunter Biden to Joe Biden himself.
See, you'll have to show me those, because I read the Post story, and the Post is the only one that has the material.
Before the debates happen, a gentleman came up to the White House and the other campaign press room at the last debate and made a particular statement, and is now, I believe, I could be wrong, but my understanding is after that he's in custody because he has certain information that corroborates what was found on that laptop.
Oh my God, you want to talk about media bias, but this is where you go down a hole where the bias on your side creates all this Pizzagate nonsense where it's unsubstantiated. And I've had this online with a couple of friends too, where they get so mad because I don't want to talk about this story. And I get it. I get that tit for tat. But I think that trying to make an opinion or a salacious rumor online be a fact without corroboration is just it's abhorrent to proper journalism. And once upon a time, I was a journalist, and to have independent corroboration is all I'm asking for. And it's not there. All it is rumor and innuendo, and things you want to be true because they're advantageous to you.
The interesting thing about how you're so quick to dismiss this is why I'm frustrated, because as soon as certain things came out, and we've spent the last 3 years plus demonizing Donald Trump in the media for every single thing that he says and does, and I get it, you have a problem with it, but we're so quick to jump right away into things that largely have not been proven to come true, and nothing is going to come out of it. It was all just a sham, just to demonize him. And yes, he may have personal traits. He may have personal traits that people find kind of abhorrent based on how his attitude, let's just say.
So what is the sham, though?
But at the same time, this whole Russia scandal, and nothing has come out of it. And every
lot has come out of it.
And every stone has been turned over. And here he is still today. He's still running for the president of the United States. Nothing has come out of those, anything at all. And now
Several indictments, all kinds of his people are in jail. Tons of stuff came out of that. Him being impeached came out of that. How can you say nothing came out of that?
And now we're in a situation where something comes out that is against a candidate and a political party and how they may or may not have done something, and it's instantly dismissed. There's nothing to it. There's nothing there. It's not sourced properly. And largely, even if it was sourced properly, no one would probably admit it unless they saw it with their own eyes.
Oh, I think if the New York Times ran it, I think if
okay, so the New York Times. So that's your standard. If the
Well,
New York Times
or
runs...
or the AP or
Okay.
any of these more centrist, reputable news organizations with big investigative departments, I get it that this is something where everybody in a position of power gets leaned on and access peddling, and there is some of that. There is the whiff of that here. I don't think it's anything untoward. I don't think it's anything beyond the normal interactions that people have in that regard. My thing that sticks in my craw is even after going back and doing research, you can't let go of the pedophilia. That pedophilia thing has not been corroborated by anybody. It is a made up thing off of Facebook. You cannot find me a quote from law enforcement that says they found pedophilia or anything of the nature. They are simply saying they're in possession of a laptop.
With disturbing.
Disturbing was Isaac's, the owner of the shop, who's a big Trump supporter. That's his take on the contents of it. It is not the characterization of the FBI.
Just because he's a Trump supporter doesn't instantly negate him from telling the truth or not. And if he's not, that's a problem. This is the thing that I have a problem with.
I'm not saying that it negates him. I'm not saying it negates him. But he's a Trump supporter who gave it to Rudy Giuliani.
The nature of it in and of itself, whether it's real or not, is a big problem for me. It's a big problem. If it's faked, I have a problem with that. If it's real, I have a problem with that.
Can it be real but not everything you think it is?
Sure. But just the in and of itself of if Rudy Giuliani is representing this as real material and it turns out it really wasn't, that's a problem for me. I have an issue with that. But that doesn't negate the discussion or having the media look into it of whether or not they think it's real or not. Whether it's real or not is the story.
No, but the media could get a lot closer to figuring out whether
when news organizations like NPR intentionally say they're not going to run it just because they don't believe it, that doesn't mean that it's not a story that should not be analyzed, researched, and looked into, because that's a problem.
Well,
if you're going to the level of saying that a son of a person that's running for the president of the United States is in possession of this material, and it's not, that's a problem. So I don't like it when the media decides we're not going to run this, because in the way it looks like they're trying to cover for a candidate.
But no media has run the pornography charges, except maybe InfoWars and things that aren't really media. I mean, it's
Newsmax had an interview with Rudy Giuliani recently.
Oh boy.
And he told them live on air in an interview that he turned this material also into the Delaware State Police because there were underage girls' photographs on there. And that was one of the specific reasons. So that's where this comes from, was from a Newsmax interview that Rudy Giuliani did live on the air.
Forgive me if I do not believe Rudy Giuliani in a Newsmax interview.
But
I need to see it.
But do you see what I'm saying here?
Well,
that if he's making this up, that's a problem, Jason.
It's a problem, and it's also a problem
that
that
pisses me off because of the content of the material.
He is sitting on the proof. He has the hard drive. He could give it to anybody he wants to prove anything he wants. He could release anything he wants to prove anything he wants. He's not doing that. Instead, he's going to a politically favorable organization and getting the spin in a story that he
Delaware
wants.
State Police is a politically favored organization.
The New York Post.
That's how it initially broke as a story.
Because
but the FBI have been in possession of this material since last year.
Yeah,
and the Delaware State Police recently.
And don't you think that if the FBI found something truly wrong, they would have done something?
Then comes in the question of the FBI's integrity, because then you get into the whole thing of whether or not the FBI somehow has a bias and they're sitting on something that's been real.
Oh my God.
Just think of this for a second. Seriously, if it turns out that it's real material and the FBI sat on it this long, Why?
Because
and why
it
is it
doesn't-
coming out now? And if Rudy Giuliani is lying about it and having it come out now to be an October surprise 3 weeks before the election, that's a problem. No matter how this whole story plays out, I want to make it really clear. I have a problem no matter which either way. But when news organizations intentionally don't report on the story, it looks bad. And it looks like to a lot of people that you're propagating a particular candidate and padding them and protecting them from it.
News organizations report on stories they can corroborate. If they can't corroborate the story, it is a rumor, Brett. That's not proper journalism. And I don't know. We're never, ever going to agree on this, but I wish that you could divorce yourself from the fact that, yeah, this probably is Hunter Biden's laptop. And yeah, there probably are some emails on there that you may or may not think rise to the level of being a political problem. That can all be true. It can also be true that you're part of spreading a rumor about this man's character with young women that has no basis in fact. And that kind of talk eventually leads people to go to family pizza parlors with guns. That is irresponsible.
You're talking about that one incident with the guy that went to the pizza parlor. I think it was in Washington, D.C. And that nut job went in there and did that because he felt and he believed certain things that ended up not being true. Let's be honest, there wasn't anything under the pizza store. But in a situation like this, I agree with you, Jason. And that's what pisses me off is that this is serious stuff. And to besmirch a man who happens to be running for a candidate that you don't support, and you're making up this material and you're putting it out there in the public in the manner, in the way that it is being put out there, just putting it, and it's not real. It just really, it makes me angry if that's possible, just as it would make me as angry if it turns out to be real. And it just upsets me that every time that, as someone who's a conservative or on the right of center, anytime that I point out something that could possibly be a big friggin' deal in a moral standpoint, and just because I'm not a liberal, just instantly makes it not even anything that matters, and it can be instantly dismissed and condescended to, and it just really irritates me because you guess what, Jason, a Harvard study just came out as well analyzing the media. Okay, you show me the chart from earlier.
I just wanted to agree with you for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I get your frustration with it. You know, like I'm not disagreeing in that regard.
Okay, good. Okay.
It's a valid frustration.
But you showed me the chart earlier. Jason showed me a chart that was from a particular ad company that did research. It was a really, really interesting chart. And thank you so much for showing me that. And it had a particular ways of rating these various news organizations. I would say hundreds maybe were charted on there, if not
quite a few. I
in
mean,
the tens.
all the major ones that you would have heard of.
And even some that a lot of people probably haven't heard of. But anyway, rated them based on the scale of left to right and how strong the information is. And my only thing that I could say to it intellectually is, okay, how did they go about deciding which was this and which was that in order to rate it the way that they did? That's when the real motivations for how the chart is made out and filled out. Otherwise, I thought it was really interesting and really good evidence. And now there's a Harvard study that comes out showing that 98% out of top 10 TV networks, print organizations, nationally and worldwide, have been 98% against and negative to Donald Trump, versus when Obama came in his first 100 days alone, the media was 60% more positive about him versus Trump the other way. And this is from a Harvard study showing that the bias and negativity against the president is a real thing. And so when you show me a chart in the way that you did, sure, I think those organizations may fall within that particular scale. Sure, I just don't know how they decided where it falls on that scale. But also this Harvard study comes out and tells everyone, well, yes, the media
but that kind of thing is
and biased.
That kind of study just talks about favorability versus unfavorability in the way that they're portrayed. And I got to say, Obama's a lot more likable of a person. Trump is immediately off-putting. So there's just going to be less unfavorable things to say about Obama because he's not continuously giving people grist for the mill.
And one last stat, if I may, really quick, to back up that Harvard study. Going into the 2016 national election, a Gallup poll polled people saying 52% of registered voters say the media was in bias of Hillary Clinton, okay, versus 8% saying the media was biased in favor of Trump. That's 2016 going into the election. We all know how the media has played out. Think of all the things that you watched from organizations that you feel are trustworthy. Okay. Can you even think of anything that's been positive that's been said about him? And that in and of itself, when you think of what people's minds were going in 2016 and what they are now, and the only thing that I'm relating to the Hunter Biden story, and then please go ahead and interject, is that we can't talk about it because it could potentially be damaging to this political candidate. And I'm saying not only that, but you're besmirching a man's name of a son of the candidate that's going for president, that's running for president. And that's really bad if the material is fake and you're doing that for someone. And so that's where I'm coming in, is that no one's talking about it on the left side of the media and the mainstream, it feels like.
Well, and that is, you wouldn't allow me to jump in and agree with you, but that was what I was trying to say, was when you initially brought this up, I immediately shut it down. I didn't want to hear anything about it. Yeah. I was convinced that this was Russian psyops. I didn't want to entertain it at all. And I still don't think it's anything. I don't think it rises to the level that you think it rises to, but it was a gut check on myself, realizing how easy I was to fall into my confirmation bias on what I did and did not want to hear. And I think we need, because the media landscape is so varied and so diverse, and we can talk about which has got this slant or which has got that slant, but everybody kind of, they imbibe the slant they want these days. And I think that I'm somebody who is pretty open-minded. I like to get to the bottom of things. I like to source things and see things clearly. But all of us, no matter how open we think we are, have the desire to hear things we want to hear and not hear things we don't want to hear. And it's easier and easier, I think, to get ourselves into those bubbles with the current media landscape. It's so diverse and people can sample whatever they really want to hear anymore. And we can talk about what's good and what's bad. But I think with media bias, it's not so much the media anymore. It's the bias of the media consumer sometimes, that we as consumers need to be more, we just need to be more aware of what we're consuming. Just like we're more aware of like the things in the foods that we eat. I think that news and this sort of 21st century information age of journalism has gotten so diffuse and so difficult to navigate that it is incumbent upon the individual to try and be your own fact checker, try to be your own middle of the road, so that you don't get too easily sucked into one thing or another. I am being really long-winded. I think there was kind of a good point in there. We'll boil it down to a t-shirt later.
When you were talking there, I was kind of nodding my head and shaking my head. There's so much there in what you just said that I agree with. And that's part of the frustrating thing. And this is why we're talking about this particular story, is exactly what you said. It was a gut check for me too. And it came out of just from talking with you and hearing, no, it's instantly dismissed. And I'm thinking, am I crazy for even thinking that this is a possibility? Which is what I was concerned about, that it was even possible. But you instantly dismissed it. And so that made me kind of gut check myself and go, whoa. And that's what is great about having these conversations, is that we totally can agree on that. It was a moment where, holy cow, am I having some sort of confirmation bias? Am I sort of showing my colors unintentionally? And like, I'm not this open-minded person that I thought this whole time. And I realized, no, I still am an open-minded person. That's because I'm talking about it with someone, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm looking at things from the right angle, because I don't want to have a misreading or incorrect perspective or conclusion to something. And that's what was great about having these kind of conversations, and why I wish more people would have them, because it would allow them to take that process of going through one by one, back and forth, and just hashing it out with someone that you trust and that and isn't trying to mess with you. And I know that you weren't trying to do that. I know that you weren't trying to say you're an absolute friggin' moron. We call each other morons, but we do it very brotherly and very, friendly and bro-y. But
well, when you brought it up,
it made me feel like that I was wearing a tinfoil hat and that I'm absolutely insane. And I took great offense to that. Like, it really bothered me, because I'm not the kind of person just to make something up because I think it's just fun.
I know. And then we decided to make it a larger part of the show.
Yeah, and I never intended it to be that way, but I guess it's real interesting because
Something I didn't even want to talk about, I think, has become a very good
it's a lesson.
It's a good conversation for this forum. You're right. This is the kind of thing that needs to be talked across the aisle.
And it's representative to people of having a lesson just to gut check yourself. Don't fall for everything just because you follow the same media cycle day in, day out. Maybe you need to switch it up a little bit, tune the channel to something else just for a moment, just for a second. Give yourself a breath and see what's going on the other side and hear what the other team is talking about, because maybe it'll help you with your own perspective and realize if stories like this are real or they're fake. That's good. But the fact if people are doing stuff like this on this level is a problem. And I think it's representing a larger part of what's happened since the social media era and media in and of itself and how people view it and how they see it represented. Some people have a problem with the way that media is right now because of a bill that was passed during the Obama administration, considering allowing certain operations or intelligence agencies to propagate propaganda onto the public. And there's things that kind of pros and cons and kind of prove that it's not as big brothery as some people make it out to be. But yes, they can distribute certain information. And when you look at all the stuff that we all now have to deal with and we all have to look at, and we all end up having our own opinions thrown in there and you can pick and choose whatever you want. It's a recipe for people to just end up being crazy, especially when you don't have a proper mind and a proper intellect and a proper outlook going into it. If you're going into it from a negative place, you're going to get negative information. But if you come from it at a perspective of a positive place, you can get a lot of really good information that could prove your points or can also be against your points and prove you wrong. And that's where the learning comes in, and that's where the perspectives comes in. And a lot of people don't take the time because they allow that confirmation bias.
Yeah, no, attack ideas, not individuals. I've been so heartened by the things that I'm seeing online where it's like a lady with the Trump sign and a lady with the Biden sign, and they're sitting there smiling with each other, or, people with opposing flags, shaking hands.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we need more of that. We need more of that. We need to be okay with other people thinking things that we don't think we could ever possibly think. They're not our thoughts. So I think this has been a good conversation. I know we were a little worried we might get heated with each other.
I was really worried because this kind of material, whether it's real or not, it hits home to me. You don't joke about this kind of stuff. And if people are going out to media and they're representing something that's fake, and then this media is propagating this stuff that's absolutely friggin' fake, or there's people that won't report it because they dismiss it and it ends up being real, no matter how you slice it, it's a problem. So this story really got to me because I have women in my own family that I love and I care about and I adore so much. And to think that even this is a possibility or someone would use something like this to their political advantage if it ends up being fake, it disgusts me. And that's where the media bias and confirmation bias conversation, because we never intended to talk about this. And I was scared to, because I don't want people to take what we're talking about in any sort of negative light, like, misrepresenting it. We're talking about something that could be real or not real.
I still, okay, so like I was trying to wrap it up. I was trying to agree, but I can't believe you're coming back to pedophilia. I feel like I debunked that, and I feel like you're holding on to it, and I feel like you're part of the problem when you say it over and over again. I have a mother and I have a sister. I would hate if any of that stuff was true, but it just isn't.
I hope not. I really do. I really do. I
Okay.
really do.
Well, I would love it if Democrats and Republicans could get along a little bit more. I'm sick of everybody being pedophiles or in a sex cult or eating babies. Like, people are all just trying their best. They bloom where they're planted, and nobody is trying
Yeah.
to be the villain.
And I don't want any side to end up being that at all.
So let's get out of this on a grace note, shall we?
I hope so. And this has been great. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, and anybody that wants to comment on these kind of conversations, this conversation in particular, or give us ideas for conversations going forward, we're always looking for that sort of interaction.
Make sure you hit us up at all the social media outlets that we have. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at the D2D Podcast, 2's numerical. And you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So like, subscribe, and please give a comment and review. We want to hear from you.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you for a very interesting, enlightening conversation.
And thank you for making time to do that as well. I learned a lot, and I hope you did. And look forward to just break some bread. Let's crack a beer.
I'm looking forward to that wild caught salmon.
I'm looking forward to it.
So should we get down to dinner prep?
I think we should. We got some cooking we got to do.
All right, buddy. Let's sign off.
Goodbye, Jason.
Goodbye, Brad.